So finally, we are here at the last technical category for the Oscars, and that is Best Film Editing. So the nominees for that are American Sniper, Joel Cox and Gary D. Roach; Boyhood, Sandra Adair; The Grand Budapest Hotel, Barney Pilling; The Imitation Game, William Goldenberg; and Whiplash, Tom Cross. Now this is a nice, interesting mixed bag of nominees for Best Film Editing because they're all kind of very different sorts of kind of editing that sounded really repetitive. But interestingly enough, I think three of these nominees really deserve it. The other two are just kind of like, I'm not sure why they're here because I did have issues with their editing specifically. But anyway, in terms of who I think should have won the Oscar at fifth place, I'm going to put American Sniper. Now, to the film's credit, it was able to retain this sense of tension throughout the movie, not just in the war scenes, but also with the scenes at home with Chris Kyle's post-traumatic stress disorder. To an extent, the movie did make good use of visual clues, like just giving us a sense of Chris Kyle's thought processes as he was in the battlefield and at home. But that's really all I can say positively about the film editing, in my opinion, because the way this movie is structured also gets really, really repetitive. It's just Chris Kyle going to Iraq, then going back home, Iraq, back home, and this might work for other movies, but here the plot structure doesn't really work necessarily because the editing doesn't increase or decrease like the intensity as the plot moves along. So it really just feels like you're on the same track, and you've been with the same kind of mindset from the first scene and the last scene. And I think the pacing overall in the movie really doesn't, it never makes the situations feel as dangerous as they really are. And you might know where this movie is headed if you know the true story, but the movie should have kind of masked the fact that whatever was going to happen in the end was going to happen. At fourth place, I'm going to put The Imitation Game. And just like American Sniper, I think The Imitation Game was able also to retain this sense of tension throughout the movie, but it's much more impressive here, I think, because there isn't any actual action happening, which is very, very hard to do. And again, you might know where the story is headed if you know the story of Alan Turing. But what makes this movie better in terms of editing, I think, compared to American Sniper, is that this movie, the survival of Alan Turing is not like the main point. So it doesn't matter if you know what's gonna happen at the end. Like the way it's edited also makes you know that that's not really what's at stake here. And the Imitation Game takes place across three different time periods. And I think the way these parts are arranged and juxtaposed to each other really do help deepen the character of Alan Turing. And this is the kind of movie that would have only worked if it was not presented in a chronological fashion. However, there are certain sections of the movie, especially near the beginning, where I feel like the fragmentation and the non-chronological narrative really kind of was not played to just benefit the story. It just felt like they're trying to be flashy for flashiness' sake. Now, number three, I'm going to put The Grand Budapest Hotel. And just like with any Wes Anderson movie, the cuts in the movie are very, very quirky and abrupt. And what's great about Wes Anderson is that he really uses these cuts for both comedic and dramatic effect. Like when you make a sudden cut, it can be funny, but at the same time, it does help make some moments kind of sad also. The sudden shifts in tone in the movie always feel natural because there is this air of like melancholy hovering over the entire thing. And I think what's interesting also about the Grand Budapest Hotel is that it does take place across different time periods, but as you go further back in time, the pace quickens, and I think this does reflect how the Grand Budapest Hotel itself in the movie used to be much livelier and more adventurous than it is now. Like when you go forward in time, you notice like how slow everything has suddenly become. And Wes Anderson loves to like insert seemingly random, just like frames into the movie that may look arbitrary, but for me, they're always filled with so much detail that really does help push the plot along, or at least deepen the world and the characters. Now, number two and my number one, I was having a really hard time trying to figure out where to put them, but I ended up with this order. So at number two, I'm going to put Boyhood. And I completely understand, again, I keep saying this, if you think Boyhood's like a boring movie or whatever, or if it's completely lacking in pacing and whatnot, and I completely disagree. For me, at least from the movies I've seen, Boyhood has the most realistic portrayal of the passage of time that I've ever seen. In the sense that there are no time cards. It never says like what year it is, and there are no obvious cuts or like dramatic editing to kind of signal like when a year is gonna shift, because movies love doing that just for dramatic effect. But Boyhood makes a really big deal out of just the mundane things, and I think it really really works here. I also think that the pace is very very consistently steady throughout the entire movie, and what I love is that they never try to make the events in the movie feel more exciting than they really are, because the events really aren't exciting. um, but this is the kind of movie that didn't need to be fast paced at all. It's so truthful to what you know how life is paced, really. And though you might not think so, for me Boyhood really is all about the visual storytelling as well, in the sense that there are lots of like different cultural details and like details about certain time periods that really kind of help push the story along. Like in lieu of time cards, you have these different like cultural touchstones and whatnot. And I think Boyhood in general is a very very well edited movie. But at number one, of course, and almost needing no explanation, is Whiplash. For me, Whiplash, like, it needed like good editing for it to work on any level, because the editing in Whiplash is so energetic and so kinetic that it really elevates a movie beyond anything else it could have been otherwise. And the editing was essential in turning this movie into a thriller of sorts. And what's great is that the editing during the musical sections really follows the pace of jazz. So even if the audience doesn't know, jazz music or how to play it, they still get a sense of how complex and how fast the music is, and they understand why the characters are just so frantic and bleeding all the time and whatnot. But for me, Whiplash also is more than its fast moments. Like even the slower moments, I think have tension really just running through them really thickly, and I think these slow moments really work well because they are obviously, at least for me, put in there to serve as counterpoints to the fast moments, and all of it really really works as great build up, especially when you get to the final like 10 minutes of the movie, which is obviously an explosive climax with fantastic editing, so much good visual storytelling, so much is said just in the looks between two people. Like it's amazing when you don't need a script and you can tell like a whole range of emotions just from two people looking at each other. That is fantastic editing. And my official prediction was that Whiplash was going to end up taking it because it's just so in your face, and thankfully it did take it. I'm very very happy about that. So those are my thoughts on the best film editing category for this year's Oscars. Who do you think should have won? What do you think about Whiplash winning? Whatever you think, whether you agree or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.